My friends, this video has been too long in the making. How to make MIDI guitars sound realistic. Do your MIDI guitars sound like you ran an MP3 of a guitar profile through a freeware amp sim? Up until now, we've been able to use MIDI bass seamlessly. Half the songs we hear today are programmed drums, but why do MIDI guitars always sound so terrible? Especially in heavy music. This video was requested over 100 times after my How to Write a Song Like Spirit Box video. Let's take a quick listen to a clip of that. That never gets old. Had a lot of fun with that one, but let's be real. You wouldn't have known that not only were the guitars MIDI, but the entire performance was. There are usually some dead giveaways of MIDI guitar. Usually they're too plucky sounding. The palm mutes don't have enough sub content. I don't have enough sub content. Make sure to hit that sub button, notification bell, and give this video a like the second you feel like it was helpful. And yes, my transition game has made it into the intro for the first time ever. By the end of this video, you'll have some tips to make your MIDI guitar sound a lot more realistic with distorted guitars. We'll be using Solemn Tones Odin for this. So what's happening, fam? Miami here with JST, and I know that a bunch of guitarists won't love this video. It's for the same reason drummers didn't like programs like Superior Drummer, Steven Slate, Drumforge. Same reason bassists didn't like all the contact libraries that kept popping up. Because it makes the player feel a little less important or needed, and in a sense, threatens a session musician's job security. But this isn't really the way that it should be thought about, or at least I think so. MIDI guitar is another tool like any other to help songwriters get the point across, or even use in a final production due to lack of funds or even knowing how to get in touch with a session musician. But there will never be a replacement for a skilled guitarist. If people practice as much as they complain, they'll be just fine. So let's get into it. The first reason why MIDI guitars always sound terrible is because they aren't humanized. And this one's pretty obvious, right? 99% of the time I can instantly pick out a MIDI guitar is the same reason I can tell when drums are fake. The velocities of the hits are all basically 127. No one plays guitar that consistently on the planet, and no drummer besides Eloy Casagrande from Sepultura can play drums that consistently. So in whichever program you're using, you have to vary the velocities, but don't just randomize it. Do it so that it makes sense. In this Spirit Box song, I manually changed some velocities, which I'm pretty sure overrides this crank feature to some extent, which makes everything 127. And please don't do step 2 first and then try to do it manually. It just doesn't work. Trust the process. Luckily, Odin has a humanize feature that I've used pretty heavily in the past called, well, humanize. You know, if you ever want to get lazy, that's the way to do it without having to go through everything. Let me show you a before and after with DI and then with the tone. Okay, dope, right? Do you hear the difference? If not, you need a bit of ear training, but you'll definitely see why this is important in a second. But that's the simple part, and it goes hand in hand with the second part of why MIDI guitars never sound real in heavy music. They're forced to the grid. Now, let's assume that you're using a MIDI guitar library that has the option of a left and right guitar. This is pretty much the standard at this point, so I don't know why you would be using anything else. When you have your MIDI on the grid, it can only start at that point and later. It's not like there's a look-ahead feature that allows for it to start before the MIDI note. And due to the limitations of MIDI, I don't see that happening anytime soon. This means you'll be playing on the beat or after, and I'm sure some of you think, okay, well, if I just move the MIDI note slightly before the beat or randomize it, that should work. But that doesn't do it either because the MIDI programs have the left and right sides starting pretty close together as far as the transients go, so it's already not as wide as it could be in the stereo image, but also not close enough that there are phase issues if, the library was created properly. So what do? We bounce the left and right of the MIDI guitars and then edit the transients to go before and after the grid, the same way we would do with a normal guitar. This, in my opinion, is the key and biggest step in creating realistic MIDI guitars. So let's take a look at an example of before and after of the edited guitars in the DIs, and then with the guitar tone.
Okay, so I took the first half of this riff and I edited it and gridded it so that it would be a little before and after the beat. And the second half of it, I left how it was before. So I'm curious what you guys think when you hear that and if you even notice the difference at first. Do you notice how much more stale the second half of that sounds? Let's listen one more time and then we'll listen with the song. It also loses a little bit of width. I don't know if you guys are noticing that or not, but all right, now let's listen with the song. Now, I'm hoping that you guys noticed that. I'm going to play it one more time. Listen to how when the second half comes in, it stays behind the beat. So it doesn't feel like it's a part of the song. Like it doesn't feel natural, like somebody was playing to it. One more time. And that's what I think one of the biggest keys to making MIDI guitar sound real.
Are you seeing how much more realistic that sounds, as well as the width that was added by doing a few simple edits? This created a world of depth for the MIDI guitar. So what's the next step for us here? Getting a filthy guitar tone. Another reason why MIDI guitars always sound fake is they just don't have a solid tone that's good enough to trick you. Just is what it is. I've run MIDI guitars and basses through real amps before, but for Odin, there's this preset Joey made for the new Attack with Jeff Loomis Tone Forge, and this will instantly get you where you need to be. I don't know what it is, but Odin and this preset kind of give you the instant metalcore sound. There are a few others in here as well, but that's a go-to preset of mine. And last but not least, the low end. There's a specific kind of buildup in the low end that happens when you're strumming on a real guitar that I feel just gets lost when you're using a MIDI guitar. But by using a Dan Braunstein trick, you can bring this back with ease. Duplicate the entire track, put a pitch shifter as the first insert, and blend it into the track to give it a low end bump that it needs instead of trying to EQ something in there. You want the movement to be there as well, and it might seem like it's a bit loose, but when you hear them together, you'll notice how powerful it actually is. So let's show what the original of this would have sounded like versus the final in and out of the song.
So this is that bottom guitar. We just take it down, pitch shift it. Doesn't sound amazing, right? But let's blend it in with the other one. Do you see how much life that's giving to the guitars? So yeah, final step in making those heavy metal distorted guitars sound a little bit more realistic.
Do you see why all that added effort comes into play? A few moves transform this from just being a run-of-the-mill MIDI guitar to something you could use in a production easily. Also, let's make something very clear here. There is a style that this kind of guitar works best for, and it's definitely metalcore, rock, and even some fast pop punk stuff. If you guys want a video on how to make acoustic MIDI guitars sound more real, leave it down below and I'll make sure to get to it as soon as I can. So in traditional fashion, let's go over the issues that are usually there with MIDI guitars. No humanization. They're forced to the limitations of MIDI. You need to get a filthy guitar tone and a low-end boost. With all of these tips, you'll be a lot further in making your guitars sound more real and your tracks and a lot less like you're playing a guitar on a piano. Are there any tips that I left out? Do you think it made a big difference? Leave it in the comments below and I'll chat with you guys just like I always do. If you're an engineer on the come up, give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, you only have to do it one time. And tap that bell for notifications so when a video drops, you know the location. Until next time, I am out of here. Mic drop. Except as engineers we know, I'd never really drop this thing because, yeah, that's just one of those times. Later.